Be sure to check out all of our interviews at athletesangle.com, where you can also find the podcast from all of our past episodes, as well as blogs about the show, including Take 5.
We talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice. Practice, man. I mean, how silly is that?
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs?
But they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
I don't really think that me breaking Jerry Rice's record was special. I think shutting you guys up is really what made it special.
All right, we're joined now on the line by Andrew Tinnish, the Director of Amateur Scouting for the Toronto Blue Jays. First off, Andrew, could you maybe briefly walk us through your baseball playing career and your rise through the ranks of the Blue Jays organization?
Sure. I born and raised in Ottawa. I grew up playing East European Little League baseball there, and at the time when I was coming through, not a ton of opportunities to play college baseball and move on to the next level. But I was fortunate coming out of high school. I did have a couple opportunities. I ended up playing at Brock University in St. Catharines. The majority of my collegiate career, I did transfer for 1 year to a small Division I school up north, Niagara University. Played there, had a knee injury, went back to Brock to finish up my degree, and played a couple more years at Brock. After university was done, I did not get drafted, but I had an opportunity to go to an open tryout for a team in the Northern League, the Quebec Capitals, and it was the year that the Northeast League and the Northern League merged, and was fortunate enough to make the team, pitched that summer, making a whopping $700 US a month, but probably the greatest, or some of the greatest 2-3 months of, or 3-4 months rather, of my baseball career. Tremendous experience, and spend a lot of time on the bench just watching the game. I was a relief pitcher, and I felt like I picked up a lot from that, and it made me better as a baseball person. And from there, I kind of got into doing some camps and tryouts with a gentleman by the name of Kevin Briand, who was the manager of amateur baseball with the Blue Jays. He ultimately hired me for an internship, and it just kind of went from there. I've had several different positions with the Blue Jays, beginning in '01 as an intern. In '02, I traveled a lot with the team and through batting practice. In '03, I was an area scout in North Florida and Alabama. And '04 basically was when I kind of really got started in the front office, in the scouting department, and kind of slowly worked my way up to assistant director. And then most recently when Alex Anthopoulos took over as GM, as a scouting director for the amateur department.
So the draft is your big day in the major leagues. What is life like for you leading up for the last month heading into that draft?
It's hectic, to say the least. And I mean, the one thing I think that people may not realize is that, work for the draft starts literally the day after the draft. I guess we take a few minutes to kind of kick back and relax, but, the big summer showcases start literally a few days after the draft, and we're going kind of nonstop until, the draft itself. The busiest time of year, without question for me, is the end of January until the beginning of June. I'd say I'm on the road probably, 25, 26 days a month, traveling all over North America, primarily the U.S., seeing high school and colleges. As we lead up, as we get close to the draft, that month, or more so the 3 weeks leading up to it, that's really when I kind of zero in on the higher picks and maybe, run back through to see some of the top guys again to really get a feel for, who are our 3 or 4 or 5 considerations for our first round pick.
What's the one thing that you always look for? Say if you're looking at a pitcher, what's the one thing that you always kind of look for in an athlete?
Well, I mean, look, there's so much that goes into it, whether it's a pitcher or a position player, and picking out one thing in particular would be difficult. But I would say that more often than not, we're looking for athletes. We're looking for strength. and we're looking for skill. And within that framework, actually, I guess I should add competitiveness to that as well. And within that framework, then we really start to break things down, mechanically. You're watching the picture, you're looking at his delivery, you're looking at his arm action, you're looking at how easy he does it, you're looking at can he throw strikes, can he manipulate the ball, the quality of the spin of his breaking ball, how does he compete, how does he handle situations when his back is up against the wall, what kind of worker is he off the field, what kind of competitor is he, those things all kind of factor in. It's really not one, perfect way to do it or one specific thing that you look for. There's so many different elements. Those are just a few of them, I guess.
All right, well, what would be then on the flip side of that? What are the couple things that might turn you off a baseball player right away when you start watching them?
Yeah, I think that, something I guess that turns me off more than anything are guys that don't compete, guys that don't react to failure and handle it well, guys who don't make adjustments to get better. Look, this is a hard game. It's probably as exhausting mentally as it is physically exhausting. It's a 162-game season up here. And if you can't compete mentally, then, it really doesn't matter how physically gifted you are, you're not going to succeed. So I think that having that competitive edge is big. The guys who just don't compete are really going to have a tough time succeeding and getting to the highest level. Because, your ability can only take you so far. I mean, you could have all the ability in the world, but when you get into pro ball, you start rising the ranks. Everybody's got ability. Everybody does. But then it gets to the point where what are the things that separate you from the other guys? And, makeup and competitiveness is certainly one of those things that separates guys.
What would you say is the most common path a Canadian amateur baseball player takes to get to the major leagues?
I would say, with our system, especially in recent years, I guess maybe let's take the last 10 years, more often than not, the best Canadian players will sign out of high school. And, I think that there's a lot of good quality elite travel programs in this country. Obviously, I think provinces like British Columbia and Ontario kind of stand out. There's good players that come from everywhere, but those provinces in particular have, the framework of the structure of the baseball programs at the elite level are very strong. And, a lot of the elite kids will then end up playing for Team Canada, a club that, certainly gets scouted heavily, especially leading up to the draft. I would say that more often than not, the best Canadian players, they'll play for these elite clubs, they'll get drafted at the high school, and they'll develop their game in pro ball. Guys like Justin Morneau, Joey Votto, to name a couple. Certainly those two standouts, two perennial MVP candidates, both of those guys signed out of high school and developed their skills in the minor leagues. You do see some guys that go to college, no question, that have success and make it to the big leagues. John Axford is an example. His route or his path is different from anybody's. He went to college for 5 years, signed and was released and played indie ball, and then the Brewers picked him up, and now all of a sudden he's their closer. So I think with pitchers, the path is a little less clear. But more often than not, the elite guys, the guys that make it, are generally signing out of high school. They come up through that Team Canada program, although Votto did not, and then make their way through the minor leagues.
We are joined today by Andrew Tinnish, Director of Amateur Scouting for the Toronto Blue Jays. Andrew, of the 19 Canadian major leaguers right now, about 8 of them are from BC, and as you alluded to earlier, Ontario and BC seem to produce by far the most Canadian talent. What is it exactly that their elite programs are doing that push these kids to that level?
Well, I think that, certainly part of it is the coaching. Certainly a lot of it is the opportunity. I think when you're out in BC, the structure in BC is solid. There's a lot of games. There's good coaching, and the weather obviously is as Canada goes, relatively favorable compared to the other provinces. Ontario, I would say, maybe has, their advantage is opportunity. There's a lot of indoor facilities. And, I mean, let's face it, we're up here in the winter. And I mean, certainly where you guys are, you get a ton of snow and it's freezing. And, we're on skates, and meanwhile, the kid in Texas, the kid in California, the kid in Florida has the opportunity to play year round. And it's not just baseball that they play year round. I think those kids down there, I mean, they play other sports, basketball and football, that make them great athletes. And, I think that's the difference maybe between Ontario, BC, and the other provinces. One is coaching, two is opportunity, three is facilities. I live in Burlington, and I work obviously at the Rogers Centre in Toronto. And, between my work and my home, there's about 4 indoor baseball facilities in a 50 kilometer drive. So, I mean, that just goes to show, and that's just in the West End. There's some up, east and some north. So, there's a lot of opportunity to take swings year round, to play a little bit of long toss or get on a mound year round. And that certainly helps. Those were not opportunities that I had when I was growing up. We might get into a gym, twice before the season started.
Yeah, Andrew, before we let you go here, maybe what advice could you pass on to young Canadian baseball players, especially people like high school kids that are living in Manitoba right now who are hoping to maybe get noticed by someone in your position?
Sure. I'll tell you what. I mean, the way I look at it is if you go out and you work hard to be the best player that you could possibly be, then, obviously you need to have some skill to go with it, but that's all that I would ask for, as a scout or as a coach. I remember growing up, look, I never played in the big leagues, but, I did have some opportunities in baseball, and I think, I feel like I created those opportunities by working hard. I didn't have the most talent. I wasn't the best athlete, but, I get into the basement of my high school and I have my buddies throw me wiffle balls in the winter, just to get extra hitting in. I play long toss, 5-6 days a week to develop arm strength. And I think that those are a couple of simple things that young players in Manitoba can do, even in the winter. Set up a little net in your basement and a tee and just hit. I mean, look, big leaguers use the tee, minor leaguers use the tee. That's just a simple thing that can make you a better hitter. And, study the game, watch the game. I felt like when I grew up, I learned a lot about the game by watching it, watching it on TV, watching it in person. That helped me get better. That helped me learn about swings, about arm action, about things like that. And I think that if a kid's really dedicated and he watches the game and he wants to get better, the opportunity is certainly there. Got to put the work in, though.
Andrew, that is some sound advice, and I'd just like to thank you a lot today for joining us here on Athletes Angle.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. Anytime.
So there you have it, folks. Thanks for listening to Athletes Angle with Ryan Carrett here on 101.5 UM FM.